I've been told that my work has a strong crossover between the East and West, and I guess looking back, it makes sense. I feel that I'm lucky to have grown up in different environments. I feel like that gave me a lot of materials to work with as an artist.
Meet this Los Angeles-based illustrator from China. She's been commissioned to create artwork for some of the world's biggest brands, including Apple, Johnny Walker, and the popular TV show Game of Thrones. Her creations reflect the places she's lived. A decade studying and working in the United States. Her formative years among the bustle of Hong Kong, and her upbringing around traditional Chinese culture. Her name in itself signals her unique background. Victo is short for Victoria, a carryover from British colonization. Chinese, British, and American influences seep into Victo's work.
Well, Hong Kong is a really hustling and bustling big city, and it has a lot of visual information, and I feel like growing up in that gave me an innate attraction to dense visuals, and sort of gave me an intuition to navigate chaos and manage complex imageries. Also, I draw from my childhood memory a lot. I really miss those days when, everyone go back to my grandma's house to have Chinese New Year. Like really, home in all capital. And that's a really nice and warm feeling. And that is where I draw my inspiration. I want people to feel that joy. Being a Chinese person and inheriting a rich thousands years of culture, I feel like I got that influence a lot.
At times, she borrows from traditional Chinese tales in her artwork.
My mother used to be a Chinese literature professor. Ever since I was a kid, she will buy me all these audio tapes of classic tales or poems. Idioms are always really fun, and it's even more fun when you can put a twist on it.
Take one illustration she did for America's National Public Radio, using the well-known fable about a frog in a well only knowing the patch of sky above its head.
So I got the idea, what if the frogs under the well who only know the little patch of sky above their head got a little radio, and the antenna can be extended outside of the well. They can climb out of the well and actually see around the world. And I feel like that's what the radio does for its listeners. When you're working for a client, you work almost like a translator in some way. Maybe you're given a pretty abstract concept, and to help people better understand that, you need to come up with visual metaphors.
Growing up, Victo didn't even consider illustration as a possible career. It just wasn't something people did. But in college, she switched from a graphic design major to art. She became inspired to pursue this field, even if it meant being one of the only women, and also woman of color, in the field.
For a long, long time, Western culture has been dominating. And we see this in so many ways. In the standard of beauty when it comes to faces, when it comes to fashion, when it comes to art. So I feel like it's no surprise that a lot of the greatest artists regarded as European, because that's the standard we're judging by.
Historically, when Eastern culture has appeared in Western art, it's regarded as the other.
You'll see the fascination with the Oriental, during the early 20th century with cinema, or even with popular books such as, Agatha Christie. The East is exotic, and it's also a kind of luxury. The spices, the silk, the china that's being imported. So you always see this fascination from a Western point of view, the mystery, of the others.
Victo believes times are changing. Her own story is a case in point.
I feel so lucky to be at this time and at this space. I mean, being a minority and a woman, I really feel like I won't get the same opportunity 100 years ago, maybe just 50 years ago. Nowadays, we see a lot of acceptance for different culture, even with body types, embracing different looks. And I feel like that is gonna really help to shape and change the landscape going on, and no longer just see the unknown as something exotic, but really understanding and seeing why people are coming from where they're coming from. That's something really precious.
More and more global tastemakers are coming from Asia. Crazy Rich Asians was America's first all-Asian cast in 25 years. The romantic comedy made $238 million worldwide, with film critics declaring that the movie was going to change Hollywood. K-pop borrowed from Western boy bands and elevated the concept into an entire global phenomenon and economic powerhouse from South Korea. The band BTS alone is worth $3.6 billion to South Korea's economy, selling out stadiums in Europe and the U.S. In literature, Haruki Murakami, Salman Rushdie, Orhan Pamuk are just a tiny sampling of the great writers who have garnered international awards and recognition for their work. And the influences of the Asian experience show up in architecture as well. Chinese architect Shi Lun wanted to connect the dots. So he traveled the world, embarking on a 203-day, 97-country overland journey.
I really hate taking a plane to somewhere else. You will forget all about the connections between this land to your homeland. You don't know how it connects by on the ground and the cultural change. You cannot experience the gradual change. So I just try to go overland to find out those connections.
Shi sketched the buildings he encountered on his journey.
Sketches is a way of observing those art, those decorations, those structures. So by doing sketches, I could see them more carefully.
What she saw was a close relationship between Eastern and Western design influences.
When I was studying in school, I had an understanding that Western culture and Eastern culture are two extremes. But after the traveling, I found out these are something that actually goes along very well, and they get along very well in all the times. And they just has the different appearances.
To Shi's amazement, the mixing of Eastern and Western aesthetics actually existed in ancient times.
When I was in Iran, there was a site, a very old site, which dated back 2,000 years ago. That's the first time I saw stone columns. Because in Eastern architecture, the above-ground buildings has never used stone columns. So after study, after I went to some more sites, I found out that Iranian architecture and Persian architecture are really affected by ancient Greece architecture. Those has very good communication between them. So that's why I got the sense, I can feel that Europe is not far away from me.
And the opposite was true too. Eastern architecture influenced the appearance of buildings in the West. The 16th century Ottoman architect Mimar Sinan was responsible for erecting hundreds of buildings during his lifetime, and his style influenced architects further west, those in the Italian Renaissance.
For architects, it's very important for us to know something more about culture, history, and all those buildings in different places in the world. So we would like to enlarge my eyesight to see more things, to get inspired by those architectures, those histories, those arts around the world.
For Victo, the goal isn't to push for one culture's artwork over another. Rather, she wants to find the universal storyline that connects to all people. She shares a quote from the mythologist Joseph Campbell.
Dreams are the personalized myth, and myth is the depersonalized dreams. And I feel like there's so much motifs and symbols in our human psyche that manifest themselves in mythologies and dreams. If you compare, for example, the Western legends and Chinese fantasies, there's a lot of similar themes going on. I feel like being an artist is trying to get in touch with that, so you are telling a story or sending a message visually with those symbols.